When does medical care stop healing and begin harming? When treatment prolongs life but diminishes its quality, are we preserving health or merely delaying mortality? Medicine is a revolutionary innovation that has changed and saved millions of lives. We currently use medicine to treat multiple of our issues, no matter how minor or extreme, and no matter if the medicine is over the counter or prescribed by a professional. Medical innovation has generally raised the standards of living, and we are becoming accustomed to having quick solutions to our health issues. This has led to fundamental changes in how we perceive our bodies and the natural courses of our lives. After all, sickness and illness are natural and have afflicted humans for all of history. Regardless, medicine's scope is continuously expanding, even to more social aspects of human life, like aging or the grieving process. This expansion often overestimates medicine's capabilities. This episode will explore the expansion of medicine's role, which is often termed as overmedicalization. Part 1. The History of Medicine. Medicine is by no means a new innovation. Surgery dates back to 10,000 BCE, when Egyptians would use sharpened rocks and stone tools to perform circumcisions. Hippocrates, the Greek physician who is often called the father of medicine, came up with his theory that our bodies are controlled by 4 elements, the balance of which determines our health. Hippocrates used this theory to prescribe herbs and poultices to his patients. He also advised changes in their lifestyle, such as diet, rest, and exercise. Though his theory proved invalid, Hippocrates' medical practices live on today. Many of our doctors have sworn by the Hippocratic Oath, a series of ethical guidelines to ensure patient care, autonomy, and beneficence. Medicine has also advanced greatly between Hippocrates' time and now. The 1900s particularly marked a series of the most rapid medical development in human history. In 1900, life expectancy was 48 years. In 2000, it rose to around 75 years. People were now surviving to see a whole new generation. This change in the human lifespan was not a coincidence. It was influenced by medical and technological innovations that transformed the way diseases were treated. The invention of penicillin, the first antibiotic, by Sir Alexander Fleming in 1928, initiated the beginning of an antibiotic revolution. Penicillin was purified and made available to the militaries of the Allied forces in World War II. More antibiotics followed, from tetracyclines and pyridines to sulfonamides and fluoroquinolones. The development of antibiotics created a cure to infections like pneumonia and tuberculosis, which were fatal less than a century before. Antibiotics also enabled surgeries, organ transplants, and other treatments by decreasing the risk of infection. The development of antibiotics was followed by several major accomplishments in the scientific and medical worlds. In 1967, the first human heart transplant was conducted. The second half of the 1950s saw the development of new vaccines for diseases like polio, measles, and influenza. Significant developments were also made in genetics and biology, such as the cloning of Dolly the sheep from a human cell, or the first child conceived through in vitro fertilization. More effective methods of chemotherapy, such as radiation, were also developed during this time. Undeniably, medical innovation transformed lives by lengthening them and enhancing their quality. However, medical innovation was also accompanied by pitfalls in treatment strategies. Physicians often frame medicine as a weapon that fights against diseases, which are termed as the enemy. As a result, physicians began to see patients as simply vessels of a disease, and they used aggressive medical treatments to eliminate disease at all costs. Physicians often dismissed their patients' pain and suffering. Their inattentiveness to the patient experience and aggressive medical treatment created the broader bioethical movement and specifically the legal doctrine of informed consent. Today, doctors and healthcare professionals follow more ethical principles to ensure that they prioritize their patients' well-being and treat them with respect and dignity that they deserve. However, the process of aggressive treatment somewhat precedes our perspective about medicine today, which I will elaborate on in coming sections. Part 2. Illness is a part of humanity. The only part of life that is unavoidable is the passage of time. It is impossible to escape that illness, aging, and ultimately death are inevitable yet integral to the natural course of life. The fact that all people will eventually succumb to illness remains, even when modern medicine pushes back that inevitability. As American surgeon and public health researcher Atul Gawande wrote in his memoir, Being Mortal, medicine has pushed the fatal moment of many diseases further outward. People with incurable cancers, for instance, can do remarkably well for a long time after diagnosis. They undergo treatment, symptoms come under control. They resume regular life. They don't feel sick. But the disease, while slowed, continues progressing, like a night brigade taking out perimeter defense. Death occurs later, but the trajectory of life remains the same. As Gawande describes, much of end-of-life care is dedicated to prolonging a chronically ill person's life, whether it's through chemotherapy, surgery, or intensive care. This momentarily sacrifices the patient's health in hopes that they will live a longer and more comfortable life in the future. However, this is an unrealistic overestimation of medicine's capabilities. Medicine can temporarily subdue a disease or ailment, but it cannot restore someone back to perfect health. By its design, medicine treats individual problems, like high blood pressure, instead of treating the body as a whole system. This means that when acting alone, medicine is inherently limited, since one treatment on its own cannot address patients who suffer from multiple diseases at once, or the complex psychological and environmental aspects of illness. However, due to the profound advancement of modern medicine, society is becoming increasingly reliant on medical interventions of all kinds, that is, over-the-counter drugs, prescription drugs, or surgeries, as an omnipotent cure to all their ailments. Society's increasing dependence on medicine is caused by medicalization, which is defined as the characterization of a disease or illness in scientific terms, and the use of medical intervention to treat these disorders. Medicalization is not a problem in itself, but over-medicalization is. Over-medicalization is the complete reduction of health to pure science, when, in reality, human health is far more complex than an individual's biology alone. In addition to the biological determinants of health, a person's well-being is influenced by various social and environmental factors, like their culture, mental state, relationships, and upbringing. In fact, the study of epigenetics proves that a person's personal experiences can alter their gene expression and make them more prone to specific diseases. This is why twins with the same genetics may end up having completely different health conditions later in life. Over-medicalization disregards these facts. It dehumanizes the population, categorizing patients based on their disease. Suddenly, rather than complex human beings, individuals become their medical conditions: a congestive heart failure, an abnormal cell growth, or high blood sugar. The process of over-medicalization negatively impacts healthcare and public health, and may even diminish the population's well-being. Part 3. Over-medicalization. As I alluded to in the previous section, over-medicalization is detrimental to society because it overlooks the importance of public health initiatives, may lead to adverse effects in patients with complex illness, and changes how we perceive natural phenomena in our lives. In this section, I will dive deeper into how over-medicalization leads to these effects. Looking at diseases through the lens of pure science, we disregard the non-biological risk factors for a disease. As a result, instead of addressing the underlying societal causes for the disease, an over-medicalized society treats it on an individual basis. For example, diabetes is most commonly associated with insulin resistance or high blood sugar, and the preventative measures for it focus on weight loss or developing new drugs. These interventions are all conducted on an individual basis, meaning they concern preventative measures and the personal choices for each person that has diabetes. Indeed, this research is important, but what it may ignore is that diabetes disproportionately affects Black, Latino, and American Indian communities, and those in lower socioeconomic classes, as per the CDC. Research into the social determinants of diabetes is being conducted, but it tends to be prioritized less than the research about biological determinants. The former method requires the medical community to acknowledge that diseases are often influenced by socioeconomic conditions, like education, racial and gender inequality, or occupation. If we ignore these societal determinants of health, it could exacerbate inequalities and worsen the health outcomes for marginalized communities, and thus waste the efforts put into biological and scientific research. During the COVID-19 pandemic, both Presidents Trump and Biden took on the medicalization perspective. They encouraged people to wear masks and wash their hands, and their administration's main focus was on vaccines and individual treatment. Meanwhile, the CDC has come out and said that public health efforts should promote health equality by purposefully reaching out to all populations at high risk for severe illness to broaden access to pre-exposure prophylaxis, testing, and oral antivirals. This means that for everyone to have access to equal medicine and healthcare, this care must be promoted to all people heavily. Medicalization allows for the government and institutions to pass on their responsibility to uphold the people's health to the people themselves. As a result, the needs of individuals who take on an unequal toll from public health crises like the COVID-19 pandemic, such as racial minorities, the elderly, and the disabled, are easily overlooked. Medicine should be a collective effort to ensure the health of the entire population, which may mean giving extra aid to communities in more need instead of offloading that responsibility to the public. Over-medicalization also oversimplifies complex diseases. Modern medicine categorizes people's issues, often to specific body systems or region. This is illustrated by how medicine is divided into many specialties, like cardiology, neurology, and dermatology, to name a few. This system suggests that the human body is also easily categorized into different subsections. However, this categorization is ignorant of the complexities of our bodies. The human body functions as an entire system, where the air we inhale impacts how many nutrients get passed on to the brain, which regulates basically all of our actions, voluntary and involuntary, and so on. This is just one general example. As you can see, our health cannot be reduced to just one body system. The challenge of creating medical treatments for complex diseases is pertinent when treating an elderly patient with multiple chronic disorders, each with its own physiology. Often, these patients take concoctions of at most 10 different prescription medications at a time, one for each of their diseases. Though each drug has a distinct mechanism of action, in the body they interact dynamically, and if not selected carefully, they result in harmful side effects that may even worsen the person's illness. Overmedicalization means that physicians may combine medicines that work poorly with each other, and even overprescribe unnecessary medications, both of which increase the risk of adverse effects. This issue also extends to administering excessive medication and conducting last chance procedures on patients who are nearing the ends of their lives. The repercussions of these aggressive treatment methods are demonstrated by a study conducted by Massachusetts General Hospital in 2010. In this study, elderly patients with fatal lung cancer were assigned to either standard oncologic care, meaning the normal chemotherapies or surgeries, or palliative care, which focuses on managing symptoms rather than intensively treating a fatal disease. Not only did the group that was given palliative care report a better quality of life and less depressive symptoms, but this group also lived 25% longer than the patients who received standard oncologic care. This study suggests that our health may be too complex for us to rely on medicine to be an ultimate fix to all our problems. Overmedicalization creates unrealistic expectations for medicine. Whether or not in a clinical environment, the overmedicalized perspective teaches us to turn to medicine for every issue, no matter how minor or major. The accessibility of over-the-counter drugs makes it easy for people to get a quick solution to their small ailments, like a headache or inability to sleep. Although this accessibility may make our lives more convenient and allow us to stay in our best health, could it be possible that our dependence on medicine can negatively impact our health as well? Overmedicalization goes hand in hand with an issue called overdiagnosis. Pharmaceutical companies are often accused of quote-unquote creating new diseases, or presenting normal parts of life as a disease. For instance, they may treat mild symptoms as critical, like framing personal issues like shyness as medical ones, suggesting that they need to be treated immediately. We should not conclude that these issues do not exist, but the expansion of what we consider a disease changes the way we perceive our own bodies. We become less tolerant of our minor issues, which may influence us to take or accept wrong or unnecessary treatments that could harm our overall well-being. Conclusion. All in all, medicine and technology in general is a double-edged sword. Though it revolutionized society and has improved many people's quality of lives, medicine has almost permanently changed the way we think of well-being and the natural course of human life. I am by no means arguing against medical innovation, but as medicine continues to evolve and play a larger role in our lives, it is important that we reevaluate what we think medicine can do, and consider the societal and environmental causes of disease. This will allow us to improve the population's health by addressing external factors that impact our well-being, like social inequality and the complexity of illness, and move towards a healthier society. Thank you so much if you have listened so far. If you would like to see more content about similar topics in biology, medicine, or public health, please consider subscribing to this podcast for the future. Thank you.